All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first session of the day. I'm Kyle. I'm going to be your moderator for today in our session here. Please remember, as we talked about in our welcome session this morning, please make sure to show your gracious professionalism. I hope you guys are ready with questions. You can drop them into our Q&A section so that if you have any questions for our amazing presenter today, she'll be able to get to them as we get to our Q&A section towards the end of our towards the later part of our session. And I just encourage you guys be ready to listen with all your different questions and everything else. And I think you're gonna really enjoy this, whether you're a rookie or you're later into your lifetime of being a team. So I'm gonna hand it off to our wonderful presenter today, Laura.
Hey everybody, are y'all able to hear me all right? I guess Kyle's the only one who's able to respond, but um, my name's Laura Bender. I've been working with Team 4112, the Eaglebots, for the past 3 years, but I'm now switching over to Team 9477, Team Lambda, to help build them up a little bit. And so today I want to talk to you guys about supporting a young team, whether that be their rookie year, their first few years, or if they're, an established team that's maybe had some issues that cause them to need to rebuild, like if they lost a lot of senior members or anything, and they just need kind of a fresh start. So I'm going to start off just talking. Can I do my slides in here? Oh, there we go. Just talking a little bit about myself. I'll introduce, kind of my experiences that I've had. Let me make my video smaller so you can see all my content here. Um, then we're going to go into some specific supports that a new team will need to be successful. It's kind of more of our rookie team information. Then, as the team grows, we're going to talk about balancing mentor support with student autonomy, how the mentor role evolves as a team grows, developing student leaders, and then developing training programs that can help support long-term growth. So just a little bit about me. This is only my first year in FIRST, so I'm not, an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I think I have had some unique experiences that lend themselves toward being able to support, new and rebuilding teams. Coming into this, I had absolutely no prior robotics experience. I had gotten a degree in mechanical engineering from Georgia Tech, where I did have to take one like introductory robotics course, but then I quickly switched gears and went on the energy systems track, where, I never had to touch really anything other than thermodynamics and heat exchangers from that point on. So when I graduated, I went into construction and architecture, kind of another left turn, and then switched to teaching after having my kids. During my interview, this is my favorite quote down here from my assistant principal. She told me, "You'll have a robotics team to coach, but it shouldn't be a huge time commitment." So if any of you all in here have been part of this program, you'll understand what a joke that time commitment statement is. Um, Speaking of which, I think Kyle's gonna post a poll at some point in the next couple minutes for you guys to let me know like how much experience you all have as mentors, as well as kind of what level your team is at, whether they're rookies or, rebuilding or anything. So that's just gonna help me be able to tailor the presentation more to your specific interests and needs. But so that's me, just kind of thrust into the world of robotics, fell in love with it, and I'm hoping that you all do too if you haven't already. For my teams, I started out coaching the Eaglebots, Team 4112 out of South Forsyth High School. This was a team that had been founded in 2012. They actually went to Einstein at Worlds. They'd won their Galileo division. Um, had a fantastic history, but their seniors graduated, COVID hit, and by the time I got there in 2022, we only had about 12 students left on the team. We had no seniors, only 3 juniors, and everybody else were freshmen and sophomores. That fall, my very first introduction to a robotics competition, we ended up in second to last place at Grits, only because the last place team didn't show up for the second day. So it was not a rosy introduction to the world of robotics. But throughout that fall, we managed to recruit a lot of students. We ended up with 40 on the team for the spring, actual build season. Um, Still no seniors on that entire team. We got one more junior, but the vast majority of the team was all freshmen and sophomores, which had its own set of challenges, but actually ended up working out really well in the long run because I had those kids for a few years. But the team really did surprisingly well that first season that I had them. They got the Excellence in Engineering Award. They were Alliance captains at the Albany competition, and they also won Engineering Inspiration at that competition, and then went on to win Engineering Inspiration at DCMP, the District Championship. So that's an automatic qualification to go to Worlds. So for the first time in over 5 years, this team was on their way to Worlds. As a rookie coach, I was a little bit panicked, but it ended up being an incredible experience that I wouldn't trade for the world. That next season, up in 2024, we got up to about 60 students on the team. We were event finalists at Dalton, got excellence in engineering and engineering inspiration again, which sent us to Worlds a second time. So for the first time in this team's entire history, we were going to Worlds back to back, which was pretty awesome. In 2025, let me scoot out of the way a little bit. We had about 60 students on the team again. We were Alliance captains at Dalton. We won EI at the, I believe it was Dalton competition. But then at DCMP, we ended up winning the Team Sustainability Award. Basically, just the judges recognizing everything that this team had done over the past few years to build themselves up into a team that could, withstand things long term. Like, hopefully, we wouldn't have another rebuilding year for a very long time, just because of all of the systems that we had put in place. So this year, however, as painful as it was to leave my Eagle bots, um, I've switched over to Team 9477, Team Lambda, which was founded in 2024, and they're out of Lambert High School. So in the 2023-2024, their rookie year, they actually had about 45 students on the team just starting out. They competed at grits. They ended up in last place, but honestly, having a rookie team be able to build a robot to be able to compete at grits without having had competed in the prior year is an accomplishment in and of itself. Like, the fact that they were even able to get there and compete is pretty amazing. One of the things that really benefited them was that they had a highly experienced mentor, Anupam Goli. I don't know if you all know him very well, but before founding Lambda, he was actually the mentor to Team Otto, which was 1746, coming off of the year that they went to Einstein at Worlds. So he is a wealth of knowledge and information about all things FIRST robotics. And so he came and founded this team and was able to really support them through that first year, especially just teaching them how to do FIRST. They were able to win the Rookie All-Star Award that year, so they were able to go to Worlds that very first season. So she had an incredible debut. Their next season in 2025, they had gotten a lot of recognition and just excitement built up at their school, having gone to Worlds their first year. And they actually ended up with over 100 students on their team for that next season. That ended up having or creating a lot of challenges for the team, especially being so new, having so many students that were, brand new to all things robotics. A couple of my team leaders are actually going to be doing a session at 11 o'clock for kind of their lessons learned through those first couple of years. So I would highly recommend checking them out. It was kind of a wild ride those first couple years. But they still did very well in 2025. They got the Industrial Design Award. They won Excellence in Engineering. They were Alliance captains at the district championship. And their mentor, Anupam, was awarded the District Championship Woody Flowers Award, which is huge. It's definitely a fantastic honor. Um, After that season, though, Anupam kind of decided to take a step back. He wanted to go back and get his master's degree and just kind of take a little bit of a break from teaching, which, if you guys are teachers, I'm sure you all understand kind of the stress that he had been put under those couple years founding that team at a brand new school. And so when he made that decision, he actually called me up. My school's only a few miles down the road. And he said, hey, this team, it's young, it's new. I've seen what you did at South, kind of building them back up. would you be willing to come over to Lambert and support this team Lambda and help them grow and get sustainable kind of the same way that you did at South? And so between that ask from him and then just some of my own personal things, like Lambert is right next door to my kids' elementary school, so just made my life a lot more convenient. I decided to make the switch, and I'm working on my first year with them now, which is it's been a lot of fun. It's been very exciting. Um, Hopefully, you all have gotten a chance to see that first poll that came up. Let me see. Am I able to see the results of that, Kyle? Do you know? I
I
don't
have
know if
to
I can see
remind
the
myself
results.
I'm always on mute. Yes, so the experience poll is down in the bottom if you guys haven't already seen it. I sent one question out already, which is what is your experience level? We have a one already that they're in their first couple years of being within the
Okay.
first program, mentor wise, and then we have two people right now that are veterans of the first family. So we got
Oh,
a
perfect.
different mix, and then I'll send out the next question in a second regarding team experience.
All right, perfect. All righty. So moving on to a little bit more of our content now that you've learned a little bit about me and my background in first. I want to go ahead and start talking about some of the specific supports that a brand new team needs to be successful. Um, Granted, I haven't founded a team myself, but I've talked to Anupam a lot, and I've talked to the Lambda team a lot about their first 2 years and how everything that went very well and all the supports that they appreciated a lot, and then also some of the things that they wish they had gotten in those first couple years to just learn how to be a successful first robotics team. So this slide here shows a little bit of a roadmap of how your first FRC season should go. Step one is, of course, forming the team, especially if you are founding a new team in an area that might not be super familiar with robotics. You need to advertise everywhere you possibly can. If you're at a school, get it in the announcements, get it on social media. If you can post flyers up at either schools or local businesses, any way that you can get the word out is fantastic. Step two, once you have some of your team members, the very first thing to focus on is what is FIRST all about? Um, Not necessarily the robot portion. Remember, FIRST is more than robots, but what it means to be a member of a FIRST robotics team. And you need to come prepared with some clearly defined team goals. Like, is your goal to, be rookie all-stars and make it to Worlds, or is your goal to just, survive through a competition season? Because depending on your personal experience level and kind of the experience of the other students that are coming in, that needs to be defined as what success is going to look like for your team. Step three is teaching them how to build a robot. You're going to be doing a lot of direct instruction on how to build an FRC robot. And at this point, it's very important to delegate and find help if you can. The more adults that you can get in there to help train the students on, how to use tools, how to do programming, how to properly wire up electronics. Any experienced people that you can get will be a huge help. You don't have to do it all by yourself. And I'm going to go into more detail on each of these in the next few slides also. Uh, Once you've gotten the robot build a little bit underway, your next big role is going to be in team management. So that's actively supporting the team. You're probably going to be the one that's defining all of the student roles and responsibilities. You're going to be designating individual tasks. And really, you're just taking on that entire team manager role. And then finally, you hit your goal of competing. So you're going to be actively supporting the team during competition toward whatever goals you had set out in the beginning. And that's going to include everything from monitoring the pits to assisting with troubleshooting if and when things break, and also ensuring on-time queuing. That can be a huge challenge for the newer teams, especially if they're not used to just the pace of the first robotics competitions. All right, so forming the team. I had animations in here to have this not just be a block of text, but I guess they're not showing up through the Zoom interface. But forming the team is going to look a little bit different depending on what kind of team you are, whether you're school-based or community-based. In the school, you have kind of a captive audience, so it's a little bit easier. But getting on the school-wide announcements, making sure you're on the school website and their social media, getting shout outs in the school newsletter, if your school hosts club fairs or parent nights, just making sure your team is present at all of those. Another great way to find students is to go around and do presentations to all of the STEM related classes in your school. So if your school has engineering and computer science classes, those are awesome ones to hit. Physics classes or other science classes, kind of your upper level math classes would probably have kids that would be interested in robotics. Just anywhere you can go to get students familiar with what the FIRST robotics competition is all about. Also, if there are any other STEM related clubs at your school, those would be great resources to help find either student members or just even support from those STEM related clubs as well. If you're a community-based team, it's going to be a lot of the same kind of steps, just out in the community instead of the school. So any kind of community newsletters you can get on, local social media pages. If your town has like a fall festival or anything that you could get involved in, um, posting posting flyers at local businesses, um, but also reaching out to like local engineering firms, because a lot of those people that work there are going to have students that are about the right age to be competing in this competition, and they might want to get their kids involved, especially if they're passionate about engineering themselves. You can also reach out to local schools. Like if the schools in your area don't have a team, but you're forming a community-based team, you can pull students from there. Um, Reaching out to other local teams, especially if you're forming an FRC team, reach out and find any FTC and FLL teams in your area, because they can be fantastic feeder programs that will go straight into your team, and they already understand the FIRST core values and everything else that goes into FIRST. So that's going to cut down a lot of your, initial startup education if they've already been competing in those other programs. Also, if you can find any local coding clubs, I know in our area we have like Code Ninjas and Girls Who Code out in the community. Reaching out to them and linking up with them to help, find new members and support the team. Regardless of whether you're a school-based or community-based team, though, as you're trying to find students to fill out your team, always remember that FIRST is more than robots. So you'll need team members with a wide variety of strengths and skills, not just your technical, typical skills that you think of when you think robots. Like you don't just need students who are able to use the power tools and do the programming. You also need students who can do outreach events and market your business to, or market your team to local businesses to get sponsorships. So a wide variety of skills are needed for these kind of teams. It's also important to continue to talk to the parents and get them excited and on board. Parents are an invaluable resource. A lot of them have jobs in these STEM sectors, or even, in the marketing and business sectors that can help you with your accounting and your marketing and outreach activities. So anything that you can do to get the parents involved and on board is going to help you in the long run. All right, so diving in a little bit about teaching the students what FIRST robotics is all about. I'm going to be throwing around the phrase more than robots several times today. If you're a veteran of FIRST, I'm sure you've heard that more times than you can even count, but it is a super important part of what FIRST is all about. So when you're forming a rookie team, they are relying on you to show them what a FIRST robotics team should look like. So you need to be really focused in those first few weeks of getting things started on creating a positive FIRST environment. So that's going to encompass embodying and teaching all of the FIRST core values. I have links in here for when these presentations get sent out. You can go to all these links and get more information on these topics. But the FIRST core values are discovery, innovation, impact, inclusion, teamwork, and fun. So in everything that you do, you should be striving to hit those core values. Gracious professionalism and cooperation are also huge in the FIRST community. And that's encompassing everything from sharing parts and expertise at competitions to just, how you treat each other when you're playing against each other, how your students are behaving in the stands. Basically, just the fact that you want to work with other teams to make sure that everybody at these competitions is performing at their best. because you don't necessarily want to beat a team just because their robot is broken and they can't even hardly show up. You want to beat a team at their best so you can show that your design is actually better than theirs. So this cooperation ethos kind of helps all of the teams perform at their best. So it's just a much more positive and true representation of all of the work that these students are doing. However, creating this positive first environment can be a huge challenge if the students that you're getting are coming from other highly competitive clubs or other sports or other robotics competitions that don't have these same core values. So getting these out at the forefront of your team formation and telling them, we're here, we want to win, we want to build a great robot, but we're not going to do that at the expense of these core values. Um, so you really just have to hold firm in supporting all of these things that make FIRST the fantastic environment that it is. The parents and mentors that you're bringing in on your team also need to be coached on these core values and also what is expected and appropriate of the mentors to be doing. There's obviously like the youth protection program stuff, which I linked in here as well. But that's all hopefully common sense to most adults. Um, but the thing that is harder sometimes for these parents and mentors coming in who aren't familiar with FIRST is the fact that their goal shouldn't necessarily be to win at all costs. Their goal is to support the growth and development of the students. So teach them all of the things that you know, but don't become overbearing and tell them, okay, well, I'm the mechanical mentor, so you have to do my design because, I'm the professional engineer and I know best. That's not what we're here for. We're here to let the students learn how to problem solve and how to gain those leadership skills so that they're able to become effective employees in the STEM industry in the first place or in the future. So your adults that are part of the team also need to always be embodying those FIRST core values and just making sure that they're supporting the students, not just, in the throes of intense competition. All right. Next up to teach the rookie teams is how to build a robot, which I don't have time in 50 minutes to tell you everything you need to know about building a robot, but I have some links in here that were really helpful for me when I was first starting out. Um, with a rookie team, especially though, you personally don't need to know everything, but for a rookie team, you kind of do. You at least need to know what direction to point them in and how to get them the resources they need to be able to figure it out. Because all of these kids, remember, if they're on a rookie team, they don't really have the experience to know even what questions to ask necessarily. So you really need to be pointing them in the right direction and sending them to these different resources so they can learn all the things that they need to know to be able to build a robot. So I have it up here that the best thing you can do is give kids access to the resources they need. But for a rookie team, you individually also need to have a pretty firm grasp on all the concepts, just so you know where to point them. So these are all links in here. When this presentation gets sent out, you can go, I have them kind of broken up into different subcategories. So some programming tutorials and a Java course if your team decides to use Java, some information on electronics and pneumatics and just different hardware, some design features, so kind of the robot basics guide by Rev, an introduction to Onshape and other CAD resources, robot inspection videos, those are a huge thing to get familiar with, and then some recommendations on tools that FRC teams will likely need. Also, just shameless plug for Chief Delphi. It's a fantastic resource. It's basically just a robotics chat room, I guess. All sorts of topics get posted in there. You can ask whatever questions you want, and people from all over the world that love FIRST robotics will help you out very happily and will give you all sorts of fantastic resources. So cannot recommend Chief Delphi enough. All right, for team management, my favorite thing about FRC, but also can sometimes be the most challenging thing about FRC, is that you can't have just one or two kids that do it by themselves. You really have to have a full team of people that are coming together to build these huge, complicated robots. The thing I love about that is that it really forces kids to learn teamwork and how to trust and rely on each other better than any other CTSO in the state of Georgia. You've got your FBLA and your DECA and everything else where the students are all competing, but they're usually an individual or maybe like with one or two partners in their competitions. First is not like that. There's only the one individual award, it's the Dean's List Award. Everything else is 100% team based. So, as a mentor, one of your main jobs, especially in those early years forming the team, is to help the team build and maintain that trust with each other. One of the best ways to do that, in my opinion at least, is defining clear roles and responsibilities. Um, you can have overall team leads if you'd like to, like if you want to have your electrical team lead or your programming team lead. Or you can break it up into individual projects and have project leads. Like, instead of having somebody in charge of all of programming, you can say, okay, you are the leader of programming the drive base. You're the leader of programming our shooter. You're the leader of programming our vision system. And that kind of breaks down the leadership roles into some more bite-sized pieces when, especially in those early years when the students maybe don't have as much experience, they can be more focused and all kind of take ownership of their own smaller parts of the overall build, which I think helps them have more buy-in as individuals and also allows them to become kind of subject matter experts in their specific areas so they can all work together and trust that, okay, well, he knows what he's talking about when we're talking about the drive-based programming. So being able to have those clearly defined roles is super helpful. One thing that I'm a firm believer in is that all of your leadership roles should be task-oriented, not just arbitrary titles. So when I first got to South Forsyth on our team, the students came up to me and told me, okay, well, this guy's the president, this guy's the vice president, this guy's, the CEO. And I'm like, okay, well, what do those actually mean? Like, what are those roles in practice? And they couldn't really give me an answer. They had just kind of assigned themselves arbitrary titles because they were without a mentor over the summer. And, I'm just going to be the leader, but the leader of what? Um, so I think it's a lot more helpful and beneficial for the team as a whole to have those more specifically defined roles. So programming lead, finance and sponsorships lead, climb system lead, if you're going to break it down by individual subsystem, just so everybody has a lot more clarity on what each individual person is in charge of. It's also great to get input from the students on what leadership roles they think would be beneficial. They'll be able to tell you if they think that one person can handle all of the programming or if they think they should break it up into those subsystem kind of leadership roles. The kids are more self-aware than you would expect sometimes, and they can really be a great resource in figuring out how you want your team to be structured. As far as task management and delegating or assigning individual tasks to individual people, Monday.com is a really great resource that we used over at South Forsyth. They have an FRC template that they have that kind of breaks it down into the different subsystems and allows students to go in and mark off like, okay, this is in progress, this has been completed. What are the tasks that we need to do in what order to find our kind of critical path to build the robot on time for our first competition. So if you don't already have a software program or anything developed that you use for kind of your time management system, I'd recommend checking out Monday.com. I believe it's free for FRC teams as well. All right, finally on to the competition phase. So I had broke this one up into things to do before competition day and then things to focus on at competition itself. So before competition day, you definitely want to work with your team to put together a packing list. I've got a link to a sample list in here. But the most important things that if you have a rookie team, you might not think about in the heat of the moment are definitely safety glasses. You won't be allowed in the pits without them. GeorgiaFIRST, I don't think usually has extra safety glasses to just hand out to teams. You are expected to bring your own safety glasses. You also need a printed copy of your team roster. And before you go to the competition, you need to go into your FIRST dashboard and double check that all of your students' consent and release forms are complete. They're all online, so it's super easy. It's all within the FIRST dashboard now. Georgia First doesn't have their own separate thing anymore. So it's a super convenient interface, but you do just need to go in and double check and make sure those are done. Otherwise, the students who don't have them complete will have to sit in the stands for the duration of the competition, which is not the most fun thing in the world. You also need to make sure you have a driver station with the hook side of like Velcro type tape um, connected to your drive station. That way it doesn't get knocked off if a robot bashes into the wall. It's required now for Georgia First competitions. You need to have your robot, obviously, as well as a robot cart to transport back and forth in between your pits and your uh, actual field. And then, of course, all of your tools and spare parts, which are a little bit more detailed in this link to the sample packing list up here. For a few things to do before you get ready to go to your competition, have your team review the inspection checklist and make sure that your robot is actually going to pass inspection. It's no fun having to go back and forth to inspection over and over again because you keep forgetting tiny little details that you have to fix while you're at the competition. It just starts the whole competition off on a stressful note. It's a great idea to watch some videos of other events so everybody knows what to expect. This is mainly for rookie teams who haven't been to a FIRST robotics competition before. Those videos are helpful just to get their minds wrapped around what this is all going to look like. Plan lodging and food, especially if you're having to travel for the competitions. Check with your students for any dietary restrictions, especially a lot of my students are vegetarian, so we have to take that into account when we're planning for food for the team. And then you should also assign competition day roles. So in addition to your regular team leadership positions, you'll have a few more specific competition day positions, like your pit captain is kind of your person who is managing the pits and making sure everybody is doing the jobs that they're supposed to be doing. Your pit crew, I like to have them on a rotation basis, so it's not just the same few kids that are in the pit at all times. Um, it is important, in my opinion at least, to limit the number of students in your pit just for safety reasons. It's only a 10-foot by 10-foot little square, and you don't want to have your team spilling out into the walkway all the time or having so many students crowded around in there that when you turn on the robot to test something, it ends up hitting somebody. That's not what we're going for here. So having a nice planned pit rotation helps reduce a lot of the questions from the students of, oh, when do I get to go into the pit? Like, I want to go, but they're hogging it. So just having that defined ahead of time is a good idea. If you're going to be doing scouting, make sure you've trained your students on how to scout and when they're expected to be doing the scouting. If you're new to FRC, scouting is when you're taking data on all of the other teams as they're competing to see who you might want to be in an alliance with once you get to the tournament bracket phase. Have your drive team decided or if you're rotating on that possibly as well, have those rotations already fully defined. Make sure they're able to get some practice beforehand just so they're ready and able to, connect to the field and do all of the things that the drive team needs to do. Having a spirit is fun, just to get everybody into the spirit and cheering. You need to have a safety captain in your pits, and then whatever other roles you want to define for competition day. You can get as crazy and fun with them as you like. One specific role that's kind of a point of contention sometimes is who should be the drive coach. So on the drive team for FRC competitions, you'll have your 2 student drivers, you'll have your human player, but then you could also have a drive coach that is either a student or an adult. You could possibly be the one to fill that drive coach role if you feel that that's what's going to be best for your team. Really, who you decide on is all going to be based on who your student drivers trust and will listen to without second guessing them. This person needs to be super familiar with all the rules and regulations for the competition. They need to know that, hey, you're not allowed to pin another robot against the side of the wall for more than a second and a half or whatever that year's designation is. So they need to be very familiar with the entire manual for that season's game. Sometimes a student is fantastic in that role, and especially as teams get more experienced, I personally like to push students to be drive coaches. It just, it's about the students, it's not about the mentors. So if you can get a student into that role who's able to perform well, that's your ultimate goal. But for rookie teams, they might not be comfortable in that position. And they might be more comfortable having you or another adult down there to help them and kind of help them keep a calm head so that they're able to, perform the way they want to perform. Ooh, I've got 15 minutes left. Let me speed up just a tiny bit. Alrighty, on competition day, there's a few different places that you're going to need to be. So being drive coach might be a challenge if you are the mentor doing that, as well as trying to monitor all of these other things. But in the pits, you should really do your best to have the students do the work. You might need to step in every now and again to help with troubleshooting and everything. But again, this is a student competition. The students should be the ones actively working on the robot to doing the repairs. You should always be monitoring the students for safety. And this is another little plug for limiting the number of students in your pit. Monitor them to make sure they're maintaining gracious professionalism. In the heat of the moment, tensions can start running high, but they still need to always maintain that professionalism there. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Other teams, the Georgia Power Booth, the FTAs, they're all super willing and ready to help you guys out. On the field, make sure you're queuing on time. There's a great app called FRC Nexus that if you guys use Discord or Slack for your communication, you can link it directly into those platforms, or you can just sign up to get text message notifications, and that'll just tell you when you're going to queue and what position for queuing you're in. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Again, the FTAs are all out there. They're going to be more than happy to help you, and maintain gracious professionalism. In the stands, you should be cheering on your alliance, not cheering against other teams. That's not gracious professionalism. Participate in the crowd activities, like in between matches, they usually do fun dances or, throw little balls at the students. It's a lot of fun. Teach them how to scout, move out of the way, to gather data on other teams' performance, and just meet and talk to other teams. It's a lot of fun. All right, so that was a lot about rookie years. A lot of it applies, throughout the course of your FIRST robotics journey. But now we're going to move forward into things that you can do as the students have a little bit of experience to help get them more autonomous and more, leading themselves as opposed to you being actively teaching all the time. All right, so now that they more or less know what they're doing, there's always more to learn, of course, but you're going to want to try to increase student autonomy. So that's going to look like having students take the lead on conducting meetings and training sessions, empowering your students to make more decisions on their own. So when they come to you for advice, instead of just giving them whatever answer you think is best, turn it back on them and ask them what they think we should do. Kind of the Socratic questioning thing. You should encourage students to come up with ideas for team activities and outreach, so team building activities, getting out in the community. And have your experienced students take on kind of a mentor role for the less experienced team members. While you're doing that, you're of course going to continue your mentor support. So you're going to coach your students through their decision-making processes, help your students make connections to be able to solve problems together. So especially if your team is pretty big, the students might not all know each other, and you can help link those students up together so they can work together to solve problems, even though they might not have known that the other person had any knowledge about that topic. Always be providing resources for additional learning so they can figure things out themselves. And you can also start giving them some insight into some of the behind the scenes things that they might not have been aware of their first couple seasons. So just, how you decide on which competitions to go to, like which district competitions you want to sign up for. All of the things it takes to plan the travel and logistics so they can maybe even take some of that load off or have their parents help take some of that load off. Just giving them more insight to the other parts of FIRST other than just the robot. And then it's always a great idea to talk to mentors of more established teams to learn what kind of processes they have and what you can maybe incorporate into your own team. This whole time, you're going to be working together to build and grow. So you should still offer ideas and suggestions, but support the students' decisions even if they decide on something else. You should be helping them set realistic goals and making plans to work toward them and kind of holding them accountable to those plans. And you're going to be providing administrative and logistical support. But you should also let the students plan and execute things like activities and outreach events more on their own. So, you can work with the library or something if that's who you're working with to get a time slot for them to come in and do an event. But then the students should be the ones planning what actually happens at that event. The hardest thing to do, especially as you're transitioning into giving the students more autonomy, is to try not to come to the rescue too often. Um, Students need to see the results of their actions sometimes, even when they're negative. If they don't plan more than 5 minutes worth of activities for that event, and then they have a bunch of 10-year-olds running around like crazy people, you know, then they'll learn to plan better next time. It's all a learning process. All right. So this is just kind of a little flow chart of how the mentor role evolves as a team grows. In your rookie year, you're going to be very hands-on. You're going to have an active teaching role, doing a lot of direct instruction, and you're going to be highly involved in all aspects of the team management. As your kids get a little bit more experience, you can start loosening the reins and slowly transition from that active teacher role to more of a mentor manager role. But you're still pretty involved in all the aspects of team management. As you go more into this established team category, your hand is still on the reins, but they're pretty loose. You're not really actively teaching all that much. You're just purely mentoring. And while you're aware of everything going on with the team, you're not highly involved in any specific aspect of the team. The students are all kind of managing that on their own. So how do we get into that established team category? Your first step is going to be to develop your student leaders. I've got to speed up a little bit so I don't take up all your time. But to develop your student leaders, you really need to start small. Put students in charge of a small robot subsystem or a small outreach event and just see how they handle it. While they're in that role, you need to be encouraging them to collaborate. One of my big things is that leadership does not mean you're just doing it on your own and then dictating what it's going to be to everybody else. It means you need to be able to work with your team members to lead them toward a common goal. So leadership shouldn't be a position where you're actively doing every single little thing for that sub team. You need to be, a true leader. This is hard for students to get used to. And so even if they're not quite comfortable with the, full leadership role and they're still doing a lot of the work on their own, you still are going to have to require communication. So even if they're working on their own, they should still be sharing their progress and the ideas with the team regularly and be willing and ready to take constructive feedback. So if they're, designing a scouting system or something in a silo and they just send it out to the team, they can't get offended if the team asks them questions on, well, why did you make this decision? Because they need to ask questions to be able to learn. And a leader should be able to answer those questions without any sort of personal offense. As they're growing into themselves as a leader, you need to give them autonomy. Again, make an effort to understand and then support their decisions, even if they're not what you would have chosen yourself. And allow for failure. I've already kind of mentioned this, but it's important to let the students experience the results of their decisions, for better or worse. If you and your student disagree on the best shooter mechanism, let the student make that decision and go with their idea, and then just see how it works in practice. That's the best way that they're going to learn. And then the students that do well with all of these other steps, you can start to increase their responsibility. So they're going to become your overall team leaders. Once you have your team leaders kind of identified, their most important job is training the other team members. This has several benefits. It forces your leaders to become subject matter experts. I'm sure you've heard the phrase that the best way to learn is to teach. This forces them to get a better perspective on all of the things that they're doing for their sub team. Having them be the ones training also puts them in a position of natural authority. So all of the new team members are coming in, they're seeing that this person knows what they're talking about and is willing to share that knowledge, and that automatically puts them in a position where the younger team members or the newer team members will come to them with questions. And so it gives them that natural authority to where they'll be listened to. It also helps to build relationships between your new and experienced team members. Oftentimes, your leaders are going to be, juniors and seniors. Your newer team members are going to be freshmen. their social circles don't really mix necessarily. So having your leaders training the younger members helps get them more comfortable communicating with each other and allows your leaders to understand those younger students' skills so that they'll actually be able to trust those younger or newer team members with individual tasks. Otherwise, they're just, if they don't know, they're not going to give them any roles or any assignments. Also, having more trainers means you're going to have more efficient, smaller group instruction. So that's going to let your leaders go into kind of deep dives on different topics. You can get your sub teams more specialized, and it just gives you a lot more chances to work one-on-one with individual students, which is always helpful for their learning process. All right. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we only have about 5 minutes left. But one of the processes that we use for helping to support this long-term growth for our training program is something we call open labs. So these occur during August and September, and they kind of double as our tryouts. We're capping the team at 60 members this year, which we're having to cut down from over 100 last year, just for logistical reasons. But for these tryouts, we have them 2 times a week for 1 hour each that last about 4 weeks, kind of at the beginning of the school year. During these sessions, each sub-team lead is going to host their own individual session with a small group, but they're going to do the same lesson both times during that week. So like we have them on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and they're going to do the same training both of those days. The benefit of that is that it allows students to try out multiple sub-teams without missing out on anything that's happening in the other sub-team they're interested in. So they can just come both days and get all the information. It also allows students that have other extracurriculars to still be able to show up once per week and still try out for the team. We have a lot of students in marching band who can't come on Tuesdays, but they are able to come on Wednesdays so they can still, have a chance to be on the team. At the end of each session, your leaders are going to fill out a rubric for each student, not necessarily rating their technical skills, but more so rating their engagement and ability to get along with others. Because building a team is what we're all about here. We don't necessarily want to only get the most technically savvy people. We want to have people that will work well together in a team setting. At the end of the 4 weeks, the students are going to fill out an application telling me what sub-teams they're interested in, and then they'll have a short quiz to complete based on what they learned during those open lab sessions, just to make sure, number one, that they were actually learning things during that time, and number two, that our trainers, our leaders, were actually teaching effectively. So it gives us a little bit of feedback as well for things we might need to do differently in the future. And then we're going to build the team based on both those applications as well as the rubrics from the open lab performance. All right, these are a few pictures of the team this year. Participating in those open labs, you can see our leaders in our Team Lambda shirts with their small groups teaching electrical and programming and manufacturing. So this is kind of what it looks like in practice. They all just go to a different corner of the room and do their thing. And I just walk around and make sure everybody's being good. That's it for me. I appreciate you guys calling in. If you have any questions, you can speak up now, or my email address is down here at the bottom. You can feel free to email me, reach out anytime. Do we want to open up the floor for questions in our last 2 minutes?
Sure. So we actually have one question from, I think I recognize this guy. We have from Scott Cox, and his specific question was, now that you've been a part of FIRST, what would you tell your pre-FIRST self about the program that you feel would relieve of initial fear that you had about the FIRST program?
So my biggest fear coming into it was that I didn't know how to build a robot. I still honestly don't really know how to build a FIRST robotics robot from start to finish. Um, the thing that I would tell myself is that the students are brilliant and they are motivated enough to where they'll figure it out themselves. If you can help provide them a supportive environment to be able to do that work, the students have 100% have the capability to be able to learn these things and put them into practice pretty much on their own. Um, the other thing I would tell myself is that all of the other teams are so supportive and helpful, and that you shouldn't be afraid to reach out to them. Like the cooperation ethos is very, very true. They are happy to help. It's not a highly competitive, like, oh no, we're not going to share our secrets. Um, they're all so supportive and helpful. And I think that would have relieved a lot of my initial fears.
I think that was a great answer.
Any other
Well,
questions?
I don't see any other questions popping up in the Q&A. So, uh, I think we're good. Anything
All
else that
right.
you want to end with, Laura?
Uh, just that I had perfect timing. We're exactly at 9:50.
All right. Well, thank you, Laura, for an amazing presentation. I hope people feel a lot more encouraged about the process of really building out a team and really helping a team to get to its fullest potential, especially during the ebbs and flows of a team's history. And I thank you for your presentation. Thank you to all of our attendees that are here today. I encourage you, please make sure to go and check out our other presentations here at our Georgia First Symposium. We'll be going all day. Check our catalog, and also Laura will be presenting with the team 9477 later for another presentation. So make sure to check them out. I encourage you guys to get a bathroom break and everything else. And I believe our next set of sessions will start at 10 a.m. So thank you guys so much. Much appreciated. And we will see you guys later on today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. And thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.